We're learning tonight that police were called to the Tepe home months before the murders for a reported domestic dispute, as investigators now urgently seek the public's help in solving this double homicide. And starting off the show tonight, we've actually got a family member, the Tepes, who says, hold on a minute about that domestic dispute call. He's here to explain that.
Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning journalist, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. This is the show that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime. Tonight, we are back on the horrific Tepe murder story out of Columbus, Ohio. Of course, Spencer Tepe and his wife, Monique Tepe, gunned down December 30th, a week ago, in their home. According to reports, Spencer was shot multiple times. Monique shot once to the chest with a shot that killed her. Several 9mm casings were found. No weapon was recovered, and that is precisely why police in Columbus are saying this is not a murder-suicide. This is actually a double homicide. We're going to be joined tonight by Chief Chris Anderson of First 48 fame, as well as Tom Smith, a retired NYPD detective. And it's been a while, but Jennifer Koffendorfer is back with some really astute observations about this case. She is a retired FBI special agent. We're learning that there's going to be a private vigil in this neighborhood, in the Wineland Park neighborhood of Ohio. But first, let me bring in a very special guest here, Rob Misla. He is actually married to Spencer's sister, Maddie Tepe, now known as Maddie Misla. And Rob, obviously, we are very victim-focused here at Surviving the Survivor. Our condolences go out to you and the entire family. You know, I caught you doing some media with Ashley last night. I know I'm sure you're still in shock, but how are you holding up? How is the family holding up?
Like you said, still a little bit in shock. Just trying to take it one day at a time. We're obviously prepping everything for the services and whatnot. Staying busy, but still in a little bit of disbelief.
One of the more heartbreaking things that I read, and this was in People magazine, and it's also just got to be surreal to you to hear these big publications covering your very personal family story. But you were outspoken saying you still don't know how to tell the 1 and 4-year-old. Obviously, they're extremely young. That's got to be gnawing at you. Have you had a little more time to think about that? Or are you going to kind of put that off for a little bit, considering their ages?
Yeah, I mean, and not just me. This is the entire extended family, both sides, because we've had them for a little bit. Other side of the family has had them. They've kind of been with a couple different ends of the family, and I think, like I said, taking it one day at a time. And we've talked to child psychologists on best practices and how we go about answering their questions, really, without just like outright saying it, because you can't really describe death to a 4-year-old, or just like how permanent it is. So just trying to answer their questions in the right way and understand how they're feeling throughout the process.
And can I ask you, are you watching them? Are you taking care of them? I know family is.
We had them with us for a little bit. The Tepe side of the family is in Cincinnati. The Monique side of the family is in Columbus. So they are not with us currently.
Okay. Well, please let the entire family know that we're thinking about them. And I know you want to talk specifically about this call, but first I've got to ask you, tell us a little bit. You're married, obviously, to Spencer's sister, Maddie. She's got to be absolutely devastated. Tell us just a little bit about Spencer and Monique. People are finding out information about them through the media, and the media a lot of times, as a former broadcast journalist, we get it wrong. But tell us first about Spencer. I mean, obviously a dentist, but the kind of person he was.
I mean, yeah, just a top tier guy. Me as a brother-in-law trying to compare myself to him, it's not even close. Like, he's brilliant, graduated from dental school, is a great dentist. Honestly, so many people have reached out to me that, saw him as a patient, and just had the nicest things to say. I saw a story actually earlier today about something that somebody had written saying, he gave my smile back. And then, he was involved in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, who he had a very huge, very large influence for his little brother, who is very successful at this moment. But he became family to them. Also, he's just he's athletic dude. He was always good at sports, and he's the life of the party. Really, he's always smiling and laughing, and just also very welcoming and open to meeting new people and getting people involved.
Yeah, I read that he's an avid golfer, but someone on the show mentioned that he wrestled at the Ohio State. I couldn't find that. Did he wrestle? He didn't wrestle there. Okay.
No, he did not.
Yeah. And just tell us a little bit about Monique.
Monique, it was also just bright, huge smile all the time. She very intelligent, also just very mindful, and somebody that was really easy to talk to, especially with personal problems. She was very open. She was also she was an active person too, but just a great mother as well. Once she became a mother, her life really became about her kids, and it's just hard to picture. It's hard to see the kids without her.
And I understand she has a degree or focused on early childhood education. But the reason Rob reached out to Steve Cohen, and Steve's been in touch with him, there was a story out today by Fox News Digital, essentially talking about a call that happened back on April 15th, tax day, 2025, which is obviously a few months leading up to the murders. And it was described as a woman calling 911, crying, the dispatcher asking, "Hey, what's going on there?" The caller saying, "Me and my man got into it. Are you in danger right now?" The dispatcher asked, No, it's okay. I don't need anyone." And it goes on. But you were saying you wanted to set the record straight about this call. So what's happening with the call, Rob?
Yeah. So first off, if you listen to the voice, it's quite clearly not Monique. Everybody has seen the wedding video and has heard Monique talk, and it's obviously not Monique who's calling. Furthermore, I've been very outstated that, Spencer and Monique had people over a lot. They had, house parties, and they enjoyed kind of bringing people together. And, I think sometimes at these parties, people get a little too drunk. And that's, that happens. And from multiple people that I've talked to that were at this party have all stated, yes, we remember this happening. The woman had just a little bit of a freak out, for lack of a better term. Maybe, was having some mental health issues at the time. But she called the cops from her cell phone. I know it says it was from Spencer and Monique's house. Maybe it was close. But she was at this party, and she just had kind of a lapse psychologically, I think, at the time. And that's from multiple people have told me that.
So it was a party, and it was someone other than Monique, obviously unrelated to Spencer and Monique. So I appreciate you sorting that out, and we're going to discuss that. Once I know you have to go in just a moment. I just want to ask you, as far as between Spencer and Monique, were there any issues? Were there any problems that you knew of?
No. They loved each other so much. They were perfect for each other. And just, like, not even each other. Like, they had no problems with anybody that I've ever met. Like, I've never heard anybody say a bad word about either of the two. So, and I just want to say that, our family, as far as I know, was not contacted by Fox News before they posted this video. So, I think they kind of just jumped the gun to create, just sensationalize again, have something to say. But that's the story. And I have multiple people that are willing to go on record to say that as well. So,
well, we're going to take you at your word there. One other thing, and then I know I have to let you go. The police did was actually during our show yesterday, put out video of this quote unquote a person of interest who's walking down the alley. But I understand, if I heard this correctly, that the family also kind of wants to pump the brakes on that a little bit. Is that correct? And if so, how come?
I don't know about pump the brakes on it. I just, we all saw the video.
Mhm.
It could have been anybody in America. The video is just really hard to tell what's going on. Could it have been the guy? Absolutely. Does he look sketchy as he's walking down that? Yeah. Does he look like he's hiding his face? Sure. But could it also have been, a drunk guy walking home? That too. So,
Mhm.
I wouldn't say pump the brakes, but I just think we can all see what we're looking at. It's really hard to distinguish anything from this.
Um, Again, there's questions, that our chat is very victim focused. Our community is a lot of victims within the community, but is there any kind of link or GoFundMe for the family right now?
Yes, there is a GoFundMe. I
It,
can
it,
send that to your producers.
yeah, send that to Steve. Steve will get it to
Okay.
and we'll put that in the comment section. Everybody, for tonight's show, we'll put in the GoFundMe. And Rob, please reach out if we can help you in any way. We built a big platform here, and if there's anything we can do to get the word out or help you. And again, a lot of people say it, but I mean it. Please let the entire family know that our community of 185,000 strong is thinking of them and hoping that there's a resolution to this case really soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay. Talk to you again soon. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Heavy stuff. And this is why true crime is not something to be taken lightly, because these are real people with real lives. And kudos to Steve Cohen. I see his beautiful face back there in the waiting room, but he reached out to Steve. Steve had been in touch with him, wanted to set the record straight about that Fox News digital article. I know we're awaiting Chris Anderson, but we've got Jennifer Coffendorfer, retired FBI special agent. It's been a while since Koff has been here, and we're going to get her back more often. And Tom Smith, retired NYPD detective. No two better people to hear from about this case. And Jennifer, let me start with you. That was Spencer's brother-in-law. He is married to Spencer's sister, essentially reaching out to us to say, hey, wait a second, there's a story about this domestic call that came in on April 15th, but it wasn't Monique. It was someone else in the house. Does that change your perspective on that call at all?
Yeah, it sure does. And first of all, I also want to extend my deepest condolences to this family. I just can't imagine waking up to that kind of news as a relative. But secondarily, obviously, believe him. I'm always hesitant every time I see something hit the news, hit online. I take what they call a tactical minute and just, try to look at all the circumstances and wait to see how it ferrets out. And I'm glad he was able to come on. Thank you for making that platform for him so he could explain.
Yeah. Going back to you, Jennifer, and again, we're waiting on Chief Chris Anderson as well. Hopefully he'll join. He's running for sheriff. He's a busy man. He's a politician now, so might be shaking some hands before he gets here, but I'm going to try to get him on. But Jen Coffendorfer, just kind of from a bird's eye view, this is a very fascinating case, and I hate using that word. Nancy Grace once yelled at me for using that word related to another case, but here you have two seemingly beautiful people in love with each other, seemingly happily married. We just heard from the brother-in-law. They've got two young children, and someone enters their home and shoots and kills both of them, and we don't know who did it. We don't know any motive, at least as of yet. It's a real whodunit and a why done it. This is a real mystery. What do you think of this, just from a bird's eye view above it all?
Well, of course, there's a couple of things that just jump off the page. First of all, no signs of any forced entry, nothing taken. You have only 3 shell casings, so 2 to him, 1 to her. That shows at least some accuracy. The fact that a 9mm was used, 9mm are extremely easy to handle and also extremely easy to come by. So those are a couple things that come out. Also, the fact that this had a digital code that could be entered, the fact that the wedding was actually held there. I just can't imagine, and especially hearing about different parties that took place there, how many people had this code. I bet it was a very long list, which is going to make things more difficult. And then, of course, the Ring cameras, we can see them from two different vantages. We know that there was a camera also across the street. And then I know we'll probably get into it later. I don't want to take too much time away from Tom, but boy, these 911 calls are kind of making me think a little. I find them a little odd.
Yeah, and don't think I didn't read your tweets today, Koffendorfer. As a matter of fact, I copy and pasted one of them because I want to go through it because Jennifer made some really interesting points in a particular tweet I want to ask her about. But Tom Smith, you know this as well as anybody because you work cases and sometimes you get lost in the story, trying to figure it out and trying to solve it. But we started the show tonight. If you're just joining us with a family member, and it always really hits home. These are real people, real murders, real 1 and a 4-year-old, a really difficult way. The family has no idea how to present the fact that their parents were murdered. Obviously, the 1-year-old is extremely young, but just talk to us about the reality of true crime. Sometimes that gets lost in the weeds here.
Yeah, like as Jen said, our heart goes out to Rob and the entire family that they're dealing with right now. But it's very hard to do, but the detectives and investigators have to kind of insulate themselves from this case and just ignore what's on TV, what's in the news, what's online and all that, and just get down to doing their job and not get distracted by that, which is hard to do. I'm not saying it's not. It's hard to do, but they just have to stay focused. And the realization that this isn't TV. It's not a movie. This is real life, and these things happen. And these are the things that detectives and investigators every day have to, pound the dirt and go out there and try to figure this out. This is not an easy one because of just the lack of anything. There's not even kind of one avenue to look at with, as Jen hit every point, the lack of evidence of a break-in. We don't know if there's any DNA evidence. That's what we're kind of waiting on. The video, I think, is a good start, but with any investigation, you have to keep an open mind. You can't just focus on one particular thing that's going on in this hour or next hour or whatever. You really need to keep an open mind into every avenue of something that could have happened.
And again, Rob talked about a GoFundMe, which we're going to get the link. We're going to put it in there. But Jen, before I get to your tweet, which I thought was actually really interesting, back to this call. So the reason that the brother-in-law reached out is this 911 call that's making news, put out by Fox News Digital today. Just to go through it real quick, the dispatcher basically answers the call, says what's going on there. This caller, who the brother-in-law says is not Monique, who we're looking at, is not Monique, is crying, saying, me and my man got into it. The dispatcher asks, are you in danger right now? The caller says, no, it's okay. I don't need anyone. You want officers to come check? No, it's fine. A few interesting things about the call, Jen. It happens between 2 and 5 a.m., which is the window police believe these murders happened. It happened back on April 15th. But Rob, said it in passing, but it seems like they were not averse to having a party or two. He said that they would have, they would welcome guests, and we know that the lock on the door, to Tom's point, was a keypad lock. Does it concern you with people coming in and out of this house? And if there were parties there and people are drunk late at night, maybe they asked for the code, knew the code, and maybe possibly that's why it was easier or easy for a gunman to get in there essentially unannounced without, breaking an entry.
Well, 100%. The fact that this is a key code and that they have a lot of friends and that they had their wedding there. So possibly even caterers knew and flower individuals and all these people and friends. Listen, if I'm going to have a party and invite my friends, that means I trust them. I trust them throughout my home. And a lot of people are trusting and they're going to hand out that code. So I think it definitely will complicate the investigation.
Yeah. And just a few more things. And again, it's really important to understate and underscore, because this is why Rob, the brother-in-law, joined, was to tell us that this is not Monique. But The caller was crying. No officers at that time, Tom, ever entered the home. There was no follow-up documented, but months later, this home becomes a homicide scene. How important or not is it for investigators to go speak to this person, at least for the very least, to get a sense of, were there parties here often? What were these parties like? What was the nature of the parties? Was alcohol involved? Were drugs involved? Were they just get-togethers? How important is it to track these people down?
Oh, it's very important. I think the caller, I think, is important to get a hold of just to get it off the list, just to kind of cross it out and make sure that was what it was and that was it. But I think the course of this investigation, you were doing probably 100+ interviews with everyone they know, everyone in their inner circle, in their outer circle, everyone who was at that wedding, had access to that apartment. Everyone's going to get interviewed without a doubt. That's just part of it, and on top of not having a viable lead, you're going to have to just kind of open up even the area you thought you were going to be in with interviews and make it even larger now.
Yeah. Jen, to Tom's point here, who are you starting with in terms of interviews? And again, this is a real whodunit and a why done it. Look at this. Oh wow, Jennifer Coffendorfer. That is the real Jennifer Coffendorfer. Who are you starting with? Phil Ramos said you want to start with the last person to speak to them. Is that correct? In terms of interviews, who are you talking to first, and what are you asking? What sorts of questions are you asking?
Well, for me, I'm because this happened in the middle of the night between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. I am going to start with the people closest in their inner circle. That means family that lives in and around that area. That means their closest friends. Who do they see on a day-to-day basis? Certainly everyone at his work, people at the school that she might have interacted, and you just worked your way out. So just imagine, for everybody in the audience, your closest group. Who do you talk to every day? You start there, and then you work your way out. You slowly, hopefully, are able to sort of, ferret out the people that have alibis, the people that weren't involved in this, and you just keep going.
And what are some of the first questions, Jen? Pull back that proverbial curtain, which I like to say a lot. But if you're in that interview room and you've got the inner circle, let's say you're speaking to Rob Misla, who we just had on the show, a brother-in-law. What are you asking them? Obviously, you don't want to, at least early on, you don't want to offend anyone. You want to build a rapport. So how do you start, and where do you want to head?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the first thing really in any interview, and that can be somebody that's a drug dealer, a gangbanger, it doesn't matter. You have to build rapport. You need to find some way to connect with them, some way to open up that line of communication that they're comfortable talking with you. After that stage, the first thing I want to get to is, where were they on this particular night on the 30th, in that morning, in the late evening hours prior to that? I want to understand where they were at. Then I also want to get a full picture of their relationship with this person. How long do they talk? What do they talk about? What is their association to one another? How long have they known one another? I want to get down to the brass tacks of all of that. And really, these interviews need to be very detailed to get the information you need to discern whether you're looking at somebody that's a potential suspect.
Yeah. COE, if you are listening, and I know she is, we have 3 kids who are maniacs, but if you're listening, can we pull up the 911 calls from the morning? Because that's going to relate to Jen's tweet and also the video, not just the still. But Tom Smith, do you agree with this from River Birch? Definitely someone that knew them, in my opinion. No forced entry. Your thoughts on that? If you had to, put betting odds on it, would you say it is someone that knew this couple?
I'm going to lean that way, but I wouldn't use the word definitely yet. But, like I said earlier, you never want to paint yourself into a corner of, hey, this is what I think it is, because then you get kind of slated in the way you're thinking and the way you're talking to people and the way you're doing interviews. And you don't want to do that. You want to keep an open mind into every aspect of this. So definitely, I don't know, but you can make an assumption and kind of theorize the crime scene and what happened to that and the access to it. Do I personally think that it's someone they know? Yes, I do, just because of the factors that we know right now. But that is just my opinion with not being at the crime scene and not having the integral parts of what they have. But again, like every investigation, that can change in a minute. You can have a thought and talk to one person and that entire scenario changes on you. So that's why you have to just keep going with what you have and the evidence and where it leads you. And like Jen said, the interviews are going to be so important into the way they are now, maybe their past relationships. Was any, patient they had, did they have any problems in the office with somebody? There's an array of questions that you can sit down and just go through with every individual that you're going to have to with.
And Tom hosts an amazing show with his partner, Gold Shields podcast. Check it out. Jen, do you have a show on the YouTube right now?
Yeah, I'm still doing Break the Case with Jinkoff and Daffer, but I find I'm probably doing maybe a couple shows a month right now. So
yeah. And then here he is. If you watched First 48, you know him. First he was detective sergeant, then he's chief, and soon to be sheriff in which county is it, Chief?
Jefferson County, Alabama.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of crackle off of your mic there. I don't know why, Chief, but yep. Ooh, right there. Let me see that. There you go. That sounds a little better.
Is that better?
Much better. Yeah, we're getting. Whoa, nope, I spoke too soon.
Okay, wait a minute. I see what it is. How about that?
That sounds better, I think. Oh, nope. There's a crazy crackle. I'm going to have you bounce out for a sec with the COE, and I'm going to have her help you with that and get that fixed up. But so, Jennifer, let me go to your tweet here. And let me preface it by saying there's a guy named Dr. Mark Valrose. He is the owner of Athens Dental Depot. He's the first person to contact police on December 30th when Spencer did not arrive for work. Now, they believe that the murders occurred between 2 and 5 a.m. At 10:03, Jennifer writes, a friend of the Teppes made a 911 call and reported he looked through a window and saw Spencer Teppes' body by a bed. How did the friend see Dr. Teppes' body on the second floor unless law enforcement is designating the floor above the basement as the second floor? Jen, have you been able to figure this out at all yet?
Well, so really looked closely at the schematic of this house. There's over 40 photographs that you can find easily on Redfin, on realtor.com. And when you look through these photos, it is clear that there is no possible way to see anything on this, what I call the second floor, which would be the floor where there are 3 bedrooms located. I also looked at just this house, the description of it, and how it's described as a 4-bedroom townhome. It's just over 2,000 square feet. It's not that big. 3 bedrooms upstairs, 1 bedroom in the basement. And then you can see sort of this sprawling, what I would call a great room, if you will, that is what I would call the first floor. In other words, right above the basement. And the way it describes that basement is more of like a small area, but it does mention that there's bedroom down there. So either they're living in the basement in terms of their master, I would think, or they're up on that second floor. Exact words of law enforcement where they were found upstairs. And I'm going to put that in quotes, upstairs. So in my mind, that means the second floor in these carpeted bedrooms. That makes a lot of sense to me because there's 2 children, only 1 and 4. And I can tell you as a mama, having those little ones, I was always wanted to be near them. I did not want to be at the other end of the house until they became teenagers. So we don't know. I haven't gotten down to the brass tacks of it all, but it's a little just makes me wonder, how could he see them?
Yeah, and then the chief is back. Chief, you're muted, just so you know. Have you? How you going? How you doing, Chief?
I'm good, sir. How was that? Is that a little bit better?
Way better. Yeah, I think it was the AirPods. But I was saying, first he was detective sergeant, then chief, and soon to be sheriff. Which county?
In Jefferson County, Alabama.
Jefferson County, Alabama. If you live in Jefferson County, you better vote for our friend Chris Anderson. When is the election?
May 19th, 2026.
After all this, what made you decide to run for sheriff?
You know, it's not like I've been doing anything. No, man, I don't know. You know, God put this on my spirit. I'm going to be honest with you. He told me you got more to give, and this is where it is. He's opening up a lot of doors for me. So I'm just walking through the doors that he's opened for me.
And if you win, are you still going to come on Surviving the Survivor? That is the most
absolutely, man. I can't. You can't get rid of me that easy.
And for those who do not know, because I didn't know this for the first 2 years, but Chris Anderson is the gentle teddy bear. He's like 6'5". He is a large man, and he will be sheriff. But thanks for joining us on the story. I don't know. I don't think you saw the top. But the top we had the brother-in-law, the person who is married to the victim's sister, to Spencer's sister. He said there was a domestic call back in April, which he says was not Monique Tepe, and he wanted to go on the record and make that clear. But it appears that there were some parties going on at the house. Your 30,000-foot bird's eye view as a very seasoned homicide detective. This is an interesting case. You've got this well-respected dentist, the wife, 2 young children, murdered between the hours of 2 and 5 a.m. and no one seems to know who it is or why it would happen.
Yeah. So this is a very interesting case to me, and I'm glad you brought me on because it gives me a little bit of a opportunity to clarify something I said a little bit earlier about this case, because I did another interview about it. You know, there's a lot of intricate details in this case, and some things that'll give you pause as a seasoned investigator. And there are a few things in this case that give me pause. You know, there was. So when I think about how they describe the dentist, the victim in this case, and also let me offer my condolences to any other family members too that have been affected by this. You know, I don't come in here and give my expert opinion to chastise or anything. Our profession, sometimes we need to give those attaboys, and sometimes we need some criticism. So, you know, and that's just the nature of the beast. So I want to preface this by saying now, I've seen a lot of cases that on the forefront and on the surface, they look great. You got a suspect, and then you got a defendant, and you take it to court, and it looks great on the outside. But those intricate details are the ones where a defense attorney is going to pounce on. They're not going to talk to you about the things that you did. They're going to talk to you about the things that you didn't do. Now, there's one small area that where the details of it, I think that the investigators have to pay a lot of attention to. And that goes to about his background. There was only a small amount of time, in my opinion, before the people that or his co-workers started to think something was wrong. A very small amount of time. Now, if you're the type of person, very regimented type person, I can understand them saying, okay, after a couple of hours, I think maybe we need to call the cops. Maybe 3 or 4 hours. That you know, even the most regimented person, but in an hour, it leads me to believe that either someone very, very close to him is responsible for this, or that person knew that there was something happening in his life that would give them reason to contact law enforcement that early in just a missing person, or him stepping outside of his regimented time frame. So I mentioned that a little bit earlier, and then after I said it, I started to think about it. Wait a minute, man, I'm not saying that these folks are responsible for this man's murder. No, I never pigeonhole myself into thinking that, you know, we got a suspect right there that close. No, But I am saying that the investigators in this case need to pay close attention to that time frame, because that small little molehill of a little bit of an issue at the forefront of a case becomes a huge mountain at the end of the case when it's brought before a judge and a jury. Any first year law student just out of law school would say, okay, wait a minute. Why would they contact police this early? Could they be the ones? Because they're gonna, it's the defense attorney's job to deflect who the attention away from their suspect. Anything that does that, they're doing their jobs. So I wanted to, and that's a long explanation, but I wanted to make sure that people understood what I was saying if you saw my earlier interview. I'm not saying that the people that are close, the people that contacted law enforcement early in the investigation are responsible. Absolutely not. But I am saying that the investigators are going to have to seriously look at that small amount of time before they contacted law enforcement. And they may have already done it. It may have already been done. And because we as outsiders with our 30,000-foot view will never know everything that happened during an investigation. That's you'll never know everything that happened. So they may have already done this. They may have already moved forward, but it's got to be, because I heard another interview earlier while I was studying for this case. I heard another interview where an expert came on and said that, hey, I think these are the people that are responsible for it. And they were talking about the people that called 911 early in the investigation. No, you can't say that, because you pigeonhole yourself into naming a suspect way too early. And so yeah, but there are a lot of things in this case. I just don't, I mean, it makes it more interesting. It makes you want to study more about it.
Yeah. What the chief just said, soon to be sheriff, is really interesting, because he's echoing something that Jennifer Koffendorfer tweeted about much earlier in the day. And it is something that I never would have thought of, because I'm not a trained investigator. But let me just go back to Koffendorfer's tweet, and it continues on. It says, why did the dental office call 911 after less than an hour after Dr. Tepe was late for work? And the owner of the dental office called from Florida. Maybe nothing, but I've never heard of someone calling 911 for a late employee that quickly. Could be nothing, could be significant. That's fascinating. He calls, and he's in Florida, in less than 1 hour. I think if I was an investigator, you just want to be careful with the victims. You don't want to hurt feelings, but that is a very legitimate question, Jennifer. When did that thought occur to you, and is it still troubling you?
Yeah, I guess 2 nights ago. I know I was on Court TV Monday morning, and I talked about this because it just stuck out to me. Look, the time frame was 8 a.m. So I looked, when did this dental office open? Because most of them open at 9. This one opens at 8. They're from 8 to 4. So then I looked at, well, when did that first call come in? And it came in at 8:58, best to my recollection, right around there. Okay, so in between 8 and 8:58, a lot of things had to happen, because that owner, interestingly, was in Florida. And so the office, according to the call, that, the 911 call, et cetera, they contacted the owner who was in Florida about this. So just imagine that time frame. Now we're talking maybe, I don't know how many minutes, but that's a lot to happen within an hour, right? He has to be late. Somebody has to make a significant note of it. Then they have to get a hold of the guy on vacay. Then they have to make the decision to call 911. And within less than an hour, they call that 911 number. That just jumped off the page at me very early on.
Yeah, really interesting. Tom Smith, curious to get your thoughts about that. Are you rethinking who you're questioning? Again, the calls came in about an hour or less. So, just to go through the timeline real quick before you answer that. Again, police believe that the crime happened, the murders happened between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. They're now obviously asking for doorbell cams, alley cams. We're going to get to the video in a minute. The first 911 call, according to what I saw, comes in at 9:03, and that is from the business owner. Jen, you said a couple of minutes before 9, so it's somewhere early on. 9:22, I guess an officer arrives. 9:57 a.m., there's a call from inside the house about kids crying, and then a call that I can see a body inside the house. But all this happened in a flurry. I'm a little confused about the police arriving on scene and in the 911 calls. I don't know if I have that backwards, but Tom, what do you say overall about the fact that the calls came in very, very quickly? And the first one from Florida, some people in the chat who work in dental offices say, hey, if our dentist doesn't show up and he's got patients, we're calling for a welfare check within 40 minutes. So I don't know if it's SOP or what.
Yeah, very odd. And the one thing I want to know is who from that office called the boss in Florida and why? Who made that phone call? Because someone had to call and tell him why they were concerned. So does someone have some information about something going on in his life that they were concerned with? It's kind of like when your family member's traveling and there's a snowstorm out. Hey, if they don't get to a certain point at a certain time, I'm going to call them and make sure they're all right because of the snow. Mm-hmm. So you kind of relate it to a crime with, hey, if we don't hear from him tomorrow, something might have happened last night about A, B, and C. So those are the things, like we mentioned earlier, why these interviews have to be broken down to the absolute minute and actions of these two individuals with everyone they talk to. But as Jen and the chief said, who started this all rolling? That's who I want to talk to first. Who started this ball rolling with calling 911?
Chief, the commute apparently too, which people don't realize, is an hour and a half for this guy to get to his dental office. So, and it's Ohio where there's ice on the road. So if it was me, I just think, hey, icy road conditions. He's going slower today. He'll be here. It is very curious. Or do you agree with Tom? Do you need to speak to whoever alerted the boss in Florida to call 911? Is that one of your first interviews? And with that mellifluous voice of yours, what are you asking that person?
So yeah, that's definitely one of my first stops. I've always investigated cases kind of like, I guess the best description I can give is like a bullseye, like a target. You start off in that where the victim is found. That's where you start off at, and then you move away. So once you've gotten through the crime scene, you don't move until after you've gotten all your questions answered, even if you have to go back to and re-interview witnesses. So yeah, the people at the dentist office, they would see several visits with, Detective Chris Anderson, the Chief Chris Anderson, the Sheriff Chris Anderson. I'd be there a couple of different times because I've got to make sure that all of my questions are answered and their answers are satisfactory to what we've done in this investigation. So yeah, I'm gonna go from top to bottom with them. How long have you known the dentist? What's your relationship? What do you know about his family life? What do you know about the things that he does outside of dentistry work? Is he a party guy? Does he occasionally party with alcohol, or drugs or anything? I've got to get every intricate detail of his life because the details are what matter.
Fascinating. Again, I said this on the show last night. You've got 3 experienced investigators literally investigating a case in real time that is not solved. So it's fascinating to watch this. From Jenny, my husband and I work together. If he was an hour late and they couldn't contact either of us, someone is coming to look for us immediately. When someone is reliable consistently, I can see the worry. So that's interesting for sure. My thought exact. Go ahead. Was that you, Chris?
Yes, it was, but you don't jump to the extreme of calling 911. I'm going to send somebody to the house. I'm going to talk to a neighbor or somebody like that, or find somebody that's close. But to jump to from, okay, he's an hour late to we're calling the police, we need a welfare check, suggests to me that there may have been some reason for that.
Yeah, and you see here, Joel, he had patients waiting. Still, yeah, you would maybe send someone to the house, but then ratcheting up to 911 calls, a whole different thing. Now, speaking of 911 calls, this is not them, I don't think, in their totality, but here are clips of the 911 calls, and we'll go back to Jen Coffendorfer and see if anything, now that we're discussing this, if anything stands out about the calls. Here they are.
Let me get you on the line with the medic, okay? 911, what's the location of your emergency? We got several calls on that. What's changed since the last person I talked to?
There's a body. There's a body.
There's a body inside?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me get you on the line with the medic, okay? Stay on the line.
There's a body. Our friend wasn't answering his phone. We just were on a ship. We just came here, and he appears dead. There's blood. He's laying next to his bed, off of his bed, and there's blood. I can't get closer to see more than that.
Okay, so you can tell he's obviously not breathing or anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold it there. This goes on for a little bit, so I think we might have a bunch of the calls here. But Jen Coffendorfer, to you, and Chris, I just muted you, and I'll unmute you in a minute. But Jen, what about this call? I mean, this person sounds legitimate, at least to me, sounds legitimately upset that there's a dead body on the floor. Again, you were questioning the floor, the actual floor plan, and how a person could see that. But what are you hearing when you're listening to this part of the 911 call?
Well, again, for me, it was just the logistics of it all, because we know, according to law enforcement, he was found, quote unquote, upstairs. And for him to describe next to the bed would insinuate that he is in a bedroom, that the body is in a bedroom. And I just wonder how he's seeing it. We know he is not inside. I double and triple checked that. All the reports, the police, he saw this through a window. And so it just gives me pause. The other thing is, of course, the quickness, again, for all of this to happen for this friend. And remember, one of these individuals was a coworker. So somehow they made it an hour and a half through the snow. You can see in the alley picture, right, that you're probably going to show the possible, person of interest. I find that very interesting. I mean, this is icy. It looks this way to me. So it's not the greatest conditions to drive approximately an hour and a half. So they must have left right away, straight away, after he wasn't there at the 8 o'clock open. Anyway, I don't like the time frame, and I'm confused about how he could see what he said he saw.
Fascinating. Okay, here is the back to the 911 call. Going to continue to play it out.
It doesn't. It's cuddled. I can't look.
Okay, all right, understand. Okay, and then when was the last time somebody spoke to him?
Yesterday, I suppose.
Yesterday. Okay. How old is he?
37.
Is he like a drug user or anything like that?
No.
Okay. All right. Just that's a really young age.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. All right, we're on our way.
Columbus Police, Tech 107.
Yes, I would like to ask for a wellness check on an individual at their home.
By the way, this is obviously out of chronological order. I believe this must be the dental owner here asking for a wellness check, and then we'll get Tom's take on the flip side of this part of the call.
Well, I'm currently in the state of Florida. I'm on vacation, but this individual, Spencer, works with me, and he did not show up to work this morning, and we cannot get a hold of him or his family.
He didn't show up to work?
Correct.
Okay. Does he have medical problems or?
No, and he's been reliable, and we cannot get in touch with him, his wife, his family, anybody that lives in that house.
Okay. So
There's
you're
two
in
kids in the
Florida.
home. I'm in Florida. I own the business. I was informed by my employees that he was not at work, and he runs the office.
Did you receive information that he may have been involved in an accident or?
No, ma'am. I just know that he is he is always on time, and he would contact us if there is any issues whatsoever. And I just don't know how else to say this. We're very, very concerned because this is very out of character.
I'm going to hold it right there. I mean, Tom Smith, it's curious at the very least. You can look at it in two ways. Obviously, this could be an incredibly caring, overly cautious boss who wants to make sure his employee is fine and safe. And you can look at it through another lens that it's a little strange that he's calling with this concern. Also, he mentioned at least twice, I counted, or 3 times maybe, that he was in the state of Florida, that he's out of state. How closely do you have to, if in your line of work, listen to this call over and over in order to prepare questions for this person if you get them into the interview room, or when you do get them into the interview room?
It's concerning, and we all said it. I think more of the issue is like what all of us said. From that to everything laying out was like so fast and so quick is the odd part of it. The other thing, there's 2 things that stood out in my mind listening to him again. One, he mentions trying to call the wife also, which, why? Why are you reaching out to her? He's a few minutes late, I get it. But that's another part that's a little odd. We're trying to contact the wife. And the other part was, again, it may not be anything, but just us doing these for more than half of our life. When she asks, is there a problem? There's a good pause that he has before he answers it. Kind of deliberating. No, there's no problem. So that pause in there would definitely be a line of questioning to this individual once you talk to him.
Chris Anderson, there are already people in chat saying, how dare these people question this caring boss? But when you're an investigator, you have to ask difficult questions and you have to go to places that are uncomfortable. I do that by accident most of the time, and I get yelled at for it. And I don't do it intentionally. But look, there's going to be people who are like, I can't, believe this panel that are questioning the boss. What do you say to them? Because it is very sensitive. Oh, I think I have you muted. Hang on, Chief. Hang on one sec. And there you go. Unmuted. There you go.
All right. So, yeah, I would say to those people, the questions that are not asked are those questions that will get this case, when it goes to trial. Those will be the places where the defense attorney is going to target the cases, and could be the potential where a person who may be very well guilty, those will be the evidence that is used in order to shed or push light away from that defendant. So we're not saying that the store owners or anybody that's involved there are involved in this murder. And by no means, we're not saying it. But I am saying that you have to question those folks to make sure. If you don't ask the question, it's going to come back and haunt you when this case goes to trial. That we've seen plenty of guilty people get off because the law enforcement in those cases did not do a good job of investigating the cases in the beginning. Cases are, and we have said this 100 times. I've said this 100 times on your show. Cases are won and lost in the preliminary stages of the investigation.
Right.
They are won and lost.
I just want to jump in and just echo what the chief said. One thing that I always say, like the chief just said, the trial prep starts right now. All right. It doesn't start once you lock somebody up. The preparation for the trial begins as soon as you walk in to that crime scene and you start this investigation, because everything has to line up with what you're doing, why you looked at this individual, why you didn't look at this individual. So anyone who's thinking we're kind of eyeballing the employees is not anywhere near what we're talking about. It's a matter of the way investigations are done and questions are done and questioning of people are done, because, like the chief said, in the back of your mind is, okay, I just did this. What's the defense attorney going to say in a year from now? And those are the things you have to think of when you're doing cases like this.
Yeah. And I just had that question up. Here we go from Elaine. And Chief, I've got to ask you the tough questions. I just feel like you all have tunnel vision. What's your response to Elaine there?
Well, I've investigated over 300 homicide cases, and I've never done any dental work. So I don't know what happens in a dental office, but I do know what happens when you're prosecuting cases. And this is an area where these investigators need to pay close attention to. That's the reason why we're all talking about it. The moment that you don't, that's when you get tunnel vision, because your tunnel vision will take you outside of looking at the things that are right in front of you. So no, I mean, look, and that's fine. That's a person's opinion. I mean, but I've worked a lot of homicide cases, and I know what's going to happen when it goes to trial.
It's so interesting that the three of them are looking at the trial, because that's where it counts, right? Most of us, I don't think, are thinking that way, but these three investigators are. Jennifer Koffendorfer, a tough question for you, relatively. Can Jennifer please tell us where she read the 911 caller, saw all this through a window? I thought I read that myself. This is not true. In that timeline I just read, it appeared that person was actually in the house, which is confusing me. What do you know about this, Jennifer?
Okay, so I specifically looked this up, and it's actually, I believe, through what was released by the police. I just read this probably 3 hours ago, and then, of course, it's been mimicked on about 5 or 6. I try to always take note of where the information comes from before I repeat it. But I believe he saw it through a window. I believe that came out to line this out, came out through the police, and then was further amplified through multiple mainstream media sources. I can pull it up, though.
Yeah, I'm almost sure I read the same thing. What I'm confused on is that timeline that I just read, which could very well be inaccurate, even though I was looking through several of them, talked about how the police were in there when other 911 calls were coming in after the fact. But let's continue to listen, and then I'll get your guys' take. This is the sort of the tail end of these 911 calls. I believe that there were 3 or 4 in total, but here we go.
He can't get in touch with his wife, which is probably the more concerning thing.
This is the boss.
Okay, we will send somebody over as soon as we have an officer available, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Our boss did not report to work. We haven't been able to get a hold of him for 3 hours. We are on site, and we can hear. Okay, I just talked to somebody there. Okay, I'm just making sure somebody called. Yeah, I just got a call from somebody, and set it back up for dispatch. Okay. Are you there? Because you're not showing that you're at the location. No, I'm en route there. 911. What's location of your emergency?
Number 4.
Okay, what's the emergency there? Police or medical?
Maybe both, I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of doing the
We already had a call out there. They knocked on the front door and back door multiple times, and there was no answer.
Yeah, no answer. I can hear kids inside, and I swear I think I heard one yell, but we can't get in. At this point, I don't know if I need to break the door in or just get in the house or what. So.
Okay, were you out there when the police was out there?
I wasn't. I just got here about 5 minutes ago.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll send them back out to you.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
So those are the 4 calls. Jen Koffendorfer, I mean, one of the consistent chat comments is rude dispatcher. She's like, someone just called. Dispatchers, I think, have to take a deep breath. They've been doing these jobs, many of them, for a lot of years. But again, of these 4 calls, which one stands out to you the most? Is it the boss?
It's the boss. And I do want to mention to this for some people that are wondering if, Chris and Tom and I have tunnel vision. It's not about tunnel vision. It's about you look down a particular road and you run it to ground. And it's not that you're not looking anywhere else, but it's remiss to take something that, at least at blush, doesn't seem exactly the normal way a lot of people handle things. In fact, you can hear that's why the 911 operator, did everybody hear her pause when she's like, you're calling because a guy's late for work. So it's even odd to her. I don't know. I almost, laughed on that portion because you could see how this 911 operator wasn't taking it serious. And again, I agree with you that, listen, these 911 operators are usually very good. And she is a little bit confused. She's getting blasted with all of these calls. But let me say why I think the Florida call from the boss is the one that to me sticks out. It's because several things, the timing, but how he refers to the wife. He says something to the effect of, what's most concerning is that the wife isn't answering. And I was thinking to myself, how does he know the wife?
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't work at the office. She's a full-time mom. She takes care of kids. She's a homemaker. How is he so familiar that he would know her normal actions? I mean, maybe she turns her phone off. Maybe she's in line for preschool in the no cell zone. It's just odd to me that he would mention that.
The COE would be an incredible criminal defense attorney, but also an incredible investigator. I'd be horrible. I am not very detail oriented, but this discussion is fascinating. I know I'm going to get the hate mail. I guess bring it on. But look, here's a comment that I think is very important. It goes to what the chief is saying too. People who solve cases don't go off of feelings. Is that a universal truth, Chief? Oh, I've got you muted. I'm sorry. My bad. Here we go. You're good.
My apologies. Harley is walking around the house trying to figure out what Dad is doing, but you are absolutely right. And I appreciate the commenter's comment. We don't go off of feelings because emotions are what gets you staying back or trying a case 3 and 4 times. It gets you, it gets you sitting in front of your victim's family multiple times saying, well, we're going to have to retry this case because I didn't do something right in the beginning. But, so yeah, we don't go off of emotions. Emotions are left at the door when you're working homicide cases.
Which is obviously tough to do because there is so much emotion in it. And I always say these people, the 3 you see on the screen and all the ones we have on the show have seen the worst of the worst and put their lives on the line a lot of times. So they deserve a lot of respect. So I just want to say that publicly. Tom, back to you. Do you agree with Jennifer? Is of these 4 different 911 calls that we heard, and we did not hear them in the correct chronological order, but is the boss the one that is, I guess, most concerning, or the one that you'd go back and listen to, or the person that you'd want to speak to at least at the onset the most?
Yeah, definitely. Jen's, right on. It's a matter of, one of the other things that pumps up, and this is, as you do cases, you have questions as you're going through things. How long has he been in Florida? How long has he been on vacation? Did something happen that someone's notifying him, hey, call 911 because this happened a couple of days ago that you weren't here? Those are the things that you have to ask. And it's concerning and Jen is right on. I mean, it was so good what she said about the wife. What do you know about the wife? And why make a comment like that when you're away? And, why isn't he just telling the people at the store, hey, you're at the scene, you know what's going on, call 911, let me know what's going on. But he takes it upon himself to do it. The other one was in my mind, somewhat panicked woman driving to the scene. Like, I get your concern, but that was a little, to me, another question to ask these people of the immediacy to get to the house, to look around and see what was there. I understand most of them probably know that there's 2 kids in there, but what's the overall picture that everyone's looking at? And what is the overall concern that all these people have? It just seems too, I don't want to say convenient, but you know what I mean, that they all have the same thought about what's going on with this.
Yeah. The more details I just want to get to before we say good night to this evening is, Jen, do we know if they were both killed in bed? Also, the reporting says that Spencer was shot multiple times, but the wife was just shot once in the chest. And you mentioned these are 9mm casings. There is no weapon to be found. but a 9mm is extremely common, also extremely easy to use. But what do you know in terms of where they were killed and the number of shots from the reporting you've done on it?
Well, the only thing that's been released is that the husband, Dr. Tepe, was next to the bed in a pool of blood. So we don't know that the person saw the wife. And by the way, why everybody was commenting and I was listening, I went through the reports again and again. We heard it in those 911 calls. A guy saying, should I break in? No, we're coming. I'm looking in, but I can't see. So anyway, I can't find where somebody believes they broke into the house. I just wanted to make that clear. And boy, would that be a stupid thing to do, because the perpetrator could still be there. And secondarily, now you're making yourself, your possible DNA, fingerprints, everything else in that house. Now you're making yourself look more like a subject. But nevertheless, I don't think they were in that house. I just wanted to touch on that.
Okay. And Chief, to you, one of the things that came up yesterday, we had Phil Ramos, did 35 years in the Las Vegas Metropolitan PD. One of the things he was sort of curious about in real time was if no one broke in and Spencer goes to the door to let this person in and ends up in the bedroom near the bed, he was just wondering, why potentially he would lead a shooter into a bedroom. Maybe he didn't know it was a shooter near his, where his wife would be. Any thoughts on why the bedroom, if this person didn't break in? Because you assume that he greeted him at some point somewhere in the house, probably not in the bedroom.
There are a lot of questions. I mean, we haven't even, and that brings up another aspect of the investigation, because look, so there could be two reasons. One, that he's so familiar and so comfortable with this person that he allowed him into his bedroom, or this could have been a robbery, but a robbery didn't really say as much, because there was nothing that would suggest that this person was there to commit a robbery in the house. So, these are all questions that you'll have to overcome before this case can go anywhere. We talked a lot about the 911 calls and the calls that were made from the co-workers, but that's just one aspect of it. Mm-hmm. That's a whole nother aspect that you're going to have to overcome. And then you talk about how the victims were shot, because if I'm correct, please, Jan Koff, if I'm incorrect, please correct me. But I understand that the doctor was shot twice in the chest, and then the wife was shot maybe once. So to the common person, that doesn't look very different. But to me, to law enforcement, that suggests a lot. That there are not a lot of people that can knock off, that know that you double tap on in the center mass of a person's chest. That they're not, and then you take out one shot, one kill for the next person. So that lets me know that this is, look, feels like, and we don't go off of feelings, but it feels like this was a targeted attack. This person knew exactly what he was going to do. He did that, then killed, then let off any other witnesses and left out of the house. Didn't kill the kids because he's not. So the kids are very, very young in age. But I have seen cases where, the suspects in these cases don't leave any witnesses. And sometimes the youngest victims are victims of horrendous crimes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, these are all steps in an investigation that'll need to be looked into. Like I said, 911 call is one thing. Where the victims were found is another thing. The way that they were murdered is another thing. These are all aspects of the investigation that'll have to be overcome.
Another very interesting thing, Tom Smith, I'll have you comment on this, is what's not said. And by the way, I want to say, obviously everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And I don't think anyone is pointing the finger at anybody. We're having a conversation about what investigators look at and some of the difficult questions that evolve from that. So no one is saying anyone is guilty of anything. With that said, Tom, sometimes it's the things that are not said. And on the 911 call, this person apparently doesn't ever identify himself as being the with the Athens Dental Depot specifically. Never mentions that he's a dentist. Curious. Again, also doesn't mention that the office is an hour and a half away. Are these important things that you think might have been mentioned by someone else on a 911 call or no?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I wouldn't look that much into it because he's trying to get just the factual parts of it out as quickly as he can to get a quick response and not hold up having a conversation of particulars of where they work, the name of the office, what he does, all that. They want to get, sound it like an emergency, which it was in their mind, to get it out as quickly as possible. But you know what? The one thing I want to say, Joel, is we don't know exactly right now everything the police know. So there may be some things that are out there that they have and are holding on to that we don't know yet. So to speculate on the avenue of the investigation or what they have so far, we may not know all that as well.
Yeah. Thank you to Grateful. We're grateful for the super chat. Is it safe to say that each one of those callers has sat down face to face with law enforcement? I mean, the guy's in Florida. It was a week ago today. But Jen, what's your gut tell you about this? Have these 4 callers sat down in an interview room to speak with police?
I will say, absolutely, they should have been interviewed by now. They would be at the top of my list to interview, and they should have been interviewed. That doesn't mean they were, but certainly they should have been. I wanted to comment too that I also think it is very interesting that they had a dog. And now it is true that this dog is one of those, I think, Labradoodles.
Yeah, Labradoodles.
Which is, they're so sweet, but darn do they bark. They bark, they're noisy. So, that's going to be looked at too. I just find that very interesting that whoever decided to do that, did they know they had a dog? And if they did, was that dog familiar enough with this person that it wasn't a big deal to enter the house because the dog wasn't killed? Some people are very afraid of dogs. Again, it's a Labradoodle, right? It's not a German Shepherd. But I found that very interesting. Two, I found it interesting that they did not take the casings. So in other words, I've thought to myself, because this was so smoothly done, could somebody that had a beef with one of the 2 of these individuals have hired somebody? I mean, it's not out of the question. Look at the Adelsons, right? It's not out of the question, especially because of their shooting skills and their ability to get in and out, what they ended up wearing that has made their identity completely non-disclosed to anybody. And so I wondered about that, but they did not take their casings, which would be odd for somebody if they're truly, a professional to any degree, would have taken the casings.
Chief, to you, one of the, and I want to get to that video as well. So forgive me, I'm going to extend your time a little bit here. I apologize for that. If these guys were criminal defense attorneys, I would not be able to afford their billable hours. If they were investigators working privately, I would not be able to afford it, but I appreciate them coming on. Now, Monique has an ex-husband. He's apparently a vascular surgeon working somewhere in Illinois. They were married, I think, for a very short time back in 2017. He went on and I read got married something like within a month of the divorce. But still, do you want to go and talk to him to see was there any pattern in that short-lived marriage or any red flags that came up?
Everyone in this case is a suspect until you've proven that they're not. You have to group everybody into it. I won't say a suspect. I'll say a person of interest. How about that? Yeah, everybody's a person of interest until they're not. Until you can prove, okay, I know that this ex-husband was here during the time that these victims were murdered. He got witnesses and we got it on video, and I know his DNA was there during the time. That's it. I mean, because there are plenty of suspects that go around. I mean, I won't say suspects. I don't want to call everybody a suspect. I want to call them people of interest. There are plenty of people of interest in a case like this. So yeah, you have to talk to them and to piggyback off of what Koff said. Yeah, I'm hoping. I'm almost positive that these guys, everybody that what made those 911 calls, have been interviewed at least during the preliminary. If not, even if they're out of state, there's been plenty of times where I've had to jump on a plane and fly to somebody and do an interview because somebody was out of town, out of state, or jump in my police car and drive to, 4, 5, 6 hours away because, I had to interview a witness, and you got to do it early. So, yeah.
I mean, Chief, if the owner of the dental office, he was in Florida, right? Or so he says he was in Florida. Let's say he had a 3-week trip planned and he's like, I'm not coming back. Would you fly out to interview him?
Absolutely. You flying out to interview him. Yeah. And hopefully your bosses will extend the trip an extra day so you can get a little used to that Florida sun instead of coming back to the snow in Cleveland. But yeah, you flying down there to go talk to him. Absolutely.
All right. So yesterday during our show in the 7:00 hour, police actually released this. This is the video of, there's a famous case, the Sherman murders, that's never been solved, billionaire out of Toronto, Canada. And there's a video from that case called The Walking Man, where a guy has a weird gait. But here, there's a different walking man. Jen Koffendorfer, we had the brother-in-law on at the top of the show tonight, which seems like 3 weeks ago already. He said it could be anybody in the country, it could be any person. So to look at it, if you recognize it, obviously call police, but don't take it, too much to heart. That was his opinion, but obviously law enforcement is putting this out for a reason. Are they not?
Yeah, I look at that with a very critical eye. First of all, this guy's out there 2 to 5 in the morning. It's freezing out there. He's in the alley behind the crime scene. There's not another soul, at least that we can see here. Secondarily, I see so much in this tape. First of all, he's pigeon-toed. He's got a left toe that works inward. He is tall. He has a very long gait, and I understand he's on snow and things like that, but I think that's his gait. He's got a long gait. He's pigeon-toed. The type of outfit that he chose to wear, this particular jacket, this hat, I think somebody who knows him would recognize this. Only if you really know this guy, but I think you would.
Tom Smith, as I always say, you guys watch this completely differently than we do. And yesterday, I think right when he gets to the branch, it's tough to make out, but one of the investigators says he sort of looks left up into the camera. It was Dr. Detective Troy Looney who thought maybe they could use some contrast to see if they can get a bet. It's right around there. But when you're watching this, what do you see, Tom?
The very last frame, what we're looking at right now, that last movement of him making sure his head is covered and he makes a very distinct turn away from that camera. Now, one of two things is happening there. Either he knows the area, which I think he does because not everyone just walks down an alley that you don't know. He either knows there's a camera there and all of a sudden it hits him of, oh, damn, I better turn my head even more. Or there's someone else walking on that street that he doesn't want them to see his face. So they need to timestamp that and see if there was anyone near that area that might have seen him walking out of that alley. But that very last scene of that tape is very, very distinct when I look at it.
Chief, what do you see?
Same thing. It appears that he may be on the taller end, maybe a heavier set male. And he definitely knows the area because 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you stand a greater chance of being stopped by law enforcement if you're walking in an alleyway. So he knows this. It looks as if he knows this. And also I do agree that something happened, something spooked him in order for him to make sure that hat was down and that it was secured over his face. So he may have very well saw that camera as he walked by. So yeah, there's a lot to this video also.
A lot to this story. It's a fascinating story, and I cringe when I say that word because Nancy Grace, number one, yelled at me for using it. But number two, we don't know who did this. We don't know why it was done. Someone else said earlier maybe we should be talking more about motive. If you don't know, he was detective sergeant. Now he's chief, and he's soon to be sheriff of Jefferson County in Alabama. And he assures us he will still come on the show once he is sheriff. Chris, you're muted, so unmute yourself and your final thoughts here. And I'm curious, does your gut tell you this is a professional hit? Would a professional have picked up the casings? Would a professional have left them behind? Your final thoughts.
Yeah, so I would lean more so towards a professional, somebody experienced in handling weapons and firing weapons. Are they so much of a professional that they forgot to pick up the shell casings? Some experts would say no, they're probably not a professional if they forgot that. But yeah, I would be open to thinking that this person that was responsible was not just this is not a random shooting by no means. Someone was there for a specific purpose and a specific reason. So yeah, I absolutely agree that this is. I would lean more so towards being an expert.
You heard there the chief said they were not there for a random reason. It was very intentional. Tom Smith, retired NYPD detective, arguably the best law enforcement agency in the entire world. And here he is, Tom Smith. A lot of interesting things that you brought up. I think the most fascinating thing tonight were the three investigators telling us they were doing a second take at how quickly this initial welfare check came in. And I think that is something that should and will be looked at, I'm sure. And that is not to accuse anyone of anything, but that is what investigators do. Tom Smith here, you were talking about how this guy was covering up right at the end when he knew the camera was there and making it a very distinct issue to get himself out of the camera's vantage point. So with that said, same question. Do you think that this was, at the very least, very intentional shooting, a professional shooting possibly, and your final thoughts?
Yeah, I agree totally with the chief. It was a targeted hit because you have to look at it as, if we're not describing him as a serial killer, then it's a targeted hit. You know, if it wasn't random, then it was a targeted hit. And that's the way I think it came about. Something was going on, I think, in their past, in their background. They ran across the wrong person. I think he was the target, and then she just happened to be there. So you take one out, you take the other one out, and not dealing with the kids and getting out of there. I just agree with that. And that's what I think in the end. It may end up being someone I think that they know, either one of them.
If you weren't here at the beginning of the show, we had Rob Misla. He is married to Spencer Tepe's sister, Maddie. So let me just say our thoughts and our prayers and whatever you believe in, they all go out to this family. They are mourning. They are fractured, and it is tragic. And they've got a 4- and a 1-year-old who are going to grow up without a mother and father. So no matter who did this, why they did it, how it happened, why it happened, one truth remains, and that is the kids are going to grow up totally devastated, something that they're going to be dealing with for the rest of their lives while we move on to another story. So just keep that in mind. Jen Koffendorfer, retired FBI special agent and a great human being. Jen, same question. Professional hit. Certainly it appears a targeted hit. Your final thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, I always love being on with Chris. He even knows everybody calls me Coffin Law Enforcement, and meeting up with Tom here for the first time. To me, this was one of my favorite panels. It just was. Secondarily, as far as your question, look, I'm going to go out on a limb and agree with the panel. This was targeted. This was very specific to them. Whoever did this knew the code. Whoever did this knew they could get past the dog. They likely knew exactly where they were sleeping. That's how they could get in and out so quick. They had no animosity toward those kids, and they didn't want anything bad to happen to those kids. Those 911 calls bother me, and that would be the first road I would head down to see if it comes to a dead end or not. This wasn't random, I don't think.
Yeah, I love this panel as well, and we will get it back together. Just a quick programming note. Tomorrow, It's a really busy true crime day starting at 10:30 Eastern. We've got Nick Reiner in court for his arraignment. Professor Joe Explains is going to join us for that. Simultaneously, we have Corey Richins, who is going to be on trial in February, accused of murdering her husband, Eric Richins, with 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. She has a preliminary hearing, which could last 2 days. That begins at the same time. Somehow we're going to finagle both of them simultaneously, and we are staying on this story, and we might just bring this panel back, not tomorrow, the next night. So we are staying on Spencer and Monique Tepe, and again, please think of them. Shout out to Icicle Aksu from Turkey for gifting 50 Surviving the Survivor memberships. Love all of you. I said before the new year, and I'll say it after the new year, be kind. Don't kill anyone. So many people who are quick to honk on that horn. Road rage is crazy in Miami. Just take a half second extra. Be nice. It doesn't hurt. We'll be back tomorrow, 10:30 in the morning. See y'all. Guys, stick around 1 second.